Hello, friends. How are you doing? My name is Rodrigo Vilches, and today I want to talk to you about something that has been in my mind for a while, and has to do with how come Americans are become numb, very ignorant, and they forget, and they don't remember anything they learned in school or anything about the Constitution, American history, and what happened in the last just 124 years. I'm gonna show and I'm gonna demonstrate to you how stupid is this behavior, because actually it's pointing against your own interest. I've been doing research. I've been studying the American history, especially focusing from 1900 all the way to 2024. And I noticed that in this process is a common denominator among Republican administrations and a common denominator among Democratic administrations. And it's very interesting, but if you do the work and if you do the research, because you should care, you should really, really, really care to understand who is protecting you, and who is trying to destroy your structures and your economy. And more important, why. So let's go back to history. In 1901, we got a Republican president. His name was Theodore Roosevelt. Teddy. They call him Teddy. Theodore Roosevelt, he was is a Republican, but the old way, that probably the last decent American responsible Republican in the last 120 years. Teddy Roosevelt started a process that was called the Square Deal. Why he started the Square Deal? He was a Republican with deep, deep concern about the social condition of the people. We need to remember the United States was coming from the 1800s after having wars against Spain. Is when we got California, New Mexico, Texas, Arizona, wars against France. We got control over Louisiana, that used to be part of the colony of the French Empire. So, as a matter of fact, Theodore Roosevelt was one of those guys who developed our Navy. He understood we need to have a strong Navy, but also he understood after the collapse of two consecutive banking systems in the 1800s, that people need protection. So he came out with the idea of the Square Deal, who reinforced the labor union. He was against corporations and monopolies. He was against monopolies. He started breaking monopolies. He started working against oil companies that tried to control, or big corporations that tried to control things. So Ted Roosevelt government from 1901 to 1909. Amazing Republican who really cares about the people. Now, he couldn't be reelected after two periods, so his vice president, William H. Taft, became the president. Now, what's the problem with Taft? Taft was an old-fashioned, primitive, greedy Republican. So he was pro-monopolies. He was pro-corporations, and he don't give any concern about the people. That separate him completely from Roosevelt. His administration was really not good. He started creating so many situations that lead eventually, as we're going to see, into what was the Big Depression. After Taft, the American people elected Mr. Taft was from 1909 all the way to 1913. He only governed for 4 years. The people understood this guy was not good after Theodore Roosevelt. They understood this is not a solution. So what the people did, they voted for Woodrow Wilson. Woodrow Wilson was a Democrat, a genius guy. He understood, like Roosevelt, that something was wrong in the system financially. He's the guy who came out with the idea to create the Federal Reserve. That is a system financially we have today, and it's been expanded globally as a big financial structure. That was the idea of Woodrow Wilson. He governed from 1913 all the way to 1921 for 2 consecutive periods. He established, something amazing about Wilson that people forget. He's the guy who created the League of Nations. What is the League of Nations? Well, today we call the United Nations. He says we need to have a structure after the first big war. We need to have a structure that conglomerate all the nations where we can talk about international issues, because that's the only way we can preserve peace, through dialogue, conversations, negotiations, and agreements. You see? And he created the financial system, what we call today the Federal Reserve. So he was against corruption, he was against big monopolies too, and he was very concerned about peace, world peace. He was understanding clearly that financial structures works better under peace. Then the people got crazy, and was the rush after the Second War, and they voted for Warren Harding. Warren Harding became president in 1921 all the way to 1923. He died actually under his administration. The guy was corrupted, super corrupted. He signed a lease without open bid that give the Navy what was called the teapot, the teapot reserves. They were reserved for the Navy operation. He gave that lease to a very particular cheap price, without an open bid, without much democratic behavior, to the big oil corporations. Big corruption. Under his administration, as a matter of fact, the Secretary of Interior went to jail. It is funny, the Secretary of State went to jail for this corruption, but neither one of the oil company CEOs faced jail, and the president neither. What happens here? We find that it's a crime under the Republicans administration, but they just sweep it under the rug. It's what happened with Republicans. They don't face the problem, they just avoid the problem. After that, we have Calvin Coolidge, another lunatic, crazy guy, pro-corporation, pro-monopolies. He intervened deeply in the banking system, he fell. You see, it was a huge issue coming in the banking system by then. We're talking about 1923, 1929. This is the process that started with Harding, and Taft with the corruption, Republican corruption, and that lead into what was called the Great Depression of 1929. Calvin Coolidge, he failed to understand what was going on, and he failed to help the farmers. He helped to help the workers. He just avoid to address the issue. And during the process, we want to find out that Republicans normally do that. They don't want to face the issue. They don't want to tell you what the problem is, because it means they need to acknowledge they create the problem. We're going to go through history again. Then we have Herbert Hoover, third president consecutive. So we have Harding, Coolidge, and Hoover between 1921 all the way to 1933, the Big Depression. 3 Republicans, guys. Now, what Hoover did when he confront the Big Depression. He avoid to deal with the banks, avoid to deal with the monopolies. He avoid to deal with the source and the cause of the financial crisis. And you know what he did? He used something that Republicans do very well. He told the American people that the reason and the cause for this financial debacle was that around 2 million of American Mexican citizens or Mexican American citizens. These are the people that live in California, Arizona, New Mexico, Texas, when that used to be part of Mexico and the French colony. So that we took in the 1800s. So he, again, racist, figured out a way to blame immigrants that he called immigrants because they're different. They were not white people, they were not Irish, they were not a European background, they're Mexicans background. And he decided to deport them, send them back to Mexico. These people never live in Mexico. They used to live in this state, Arizona, Texas, New Mexico. But he figured out that in order to save his face in front of this crisis and his own incompetence, he just used a public relations situation and deported 2 million of Mexicans. He didn't fix the problem anyway. As a result of that, American vote for Franklin Delano Roosevelt. He is also the son of Teddy Roosevelt, a guy with ideas, a guy with a very deep understanding of how things can be fixed. So again, like his father, he came against the big corporation, start trying to stop monopolies, break the big corporation, and he started helping the people, you know, and the economy. How he did it? He came out with an idea of a new society. He paid attention and social structures that could better serve the people, for the people and by the people. Theodore Roosevelt took us out from the Big Depression. Now, during his administration was the Second War. You know, the Nazis in Germany start taking control. We have the Japanese attacking other areas. In 1943, we were forced after the invasion of the Japanese bombing in Hawaii. United States entered into the war. So Franklin Roosevelt, a Democrat, took America from the Big Depression, bring it back into the modern era, like his father, pay attention to the Navy and the military, expand the resources and the Air Force, and create new financial structures that helped the country to be in recovery. After Roosevelt died during his third administration. He's the only president in history that served for 3 consecutive periods. Why? Because we have a war. It wasn't really smart to stop everything in the middle of the war to do an election. So we keep the guy in position. After Roosevelt, the next president was Harry Truman. Harry Truman also was a Democrat with great ideas. Harry Truman came out with the Marshall Plan. The Second War is over. He came out with the Marshall Plan, who helped to rebuild Europe. Also came out with the brilliant idea of create NATO. What is NATO? NATO is an association of nations in the North Atlantic, including all Europe, that nations ally together in the defense for a common cause. What is a common cause? Democracy. And why we have to do that? Because after the Second War, we saw the development of the communism in China and the communism in Russia and the expansion of this communist idea. So Truman tried to stop this red expansion into other areas of the planet. So he created NATO. Unfortunately, after Truman, he was a very good president. He governed for 2 consecutive periods, and he rebuilt the American economy. Probably is one of the best moments in the American economy. This guy settled the structure for what was the golden age of the middle class in the United States. Now, what was the problem with that? Americans don't have good memory, and they vote again for what they thought was a hero. Dwight Eisenhower was the absolute commander during this of the army and the navy and all the forces in Europe during the Second War, even though he has very radical ideas, very extremist ideas. Eisenhower was a short guy, and like Napoleon, Republican, crazy guy, he believed that United States should be an empire. You know, it's actually Eisenhower who invade or promote the invasion of Iran. Under his administration, we reestablished the Shah in Iran. After the Second War, everywhere around the planet, started a movement. It's a movement of democratic behavior. It's happened in Korea, happened in Vietnam, happens in Libya, happens in Morocco, happens in Tunisia. All these countries were under the oppression of an empire. Morocco, for example, French, Spanish, and English. Saudi Arabia, Libya, English. Tunisia, French colonies. Korea and Vietnam, French colony. So was a movement during that period of time under the administration of Eisenhower that Vietnam and Korea start fighting for freedom from the French colonies. That's the same happens in the same historical moment in North Africa and in the Middle East. Eisenhower made a historical mistake. Why? Because he wants to be an emperor. He wants to create an empire, another Republican with a vision of something bigger, without really considering that there was never the idea of the founder father. Actually, they tried to prevent us about these ideologies. So Eisenhower, rather than help the people of Vietnam and Korea to get free from the oppression from the French, he decided to go and help the French. Now, we lost the war in Vietnam, we lost the war in Korea. We didn't achieve anything but just create enemies and divide nations. Wasn't a good idea, cost billions of dollars to the American economy. Hundreds and thousands of American lives, they went there to fight for a war that never was decent, never was ethical, and never was right. Just stupid. In the same token, during the administration of Eisenhower promoted the revolution in Guatemala. Why? Because the government in Guatemala, democratic government, desired to control Chiquita Banana. What Chiquita Banana, which is an American corporation that operates by then mostly in South America and Central America, has monopolies over the land and treat the workers like slaves. This president in Guatemala in the 50s decided that this is not going to happen. We need to change this structure. We're going to make it better. Try to nationalize and control the lands and give it back to their people so they can have a more efficient agriculture system. Eisenhower decided that it's not going to happen. Under the administration of Eisenhower, the CIA was created, and the CIA was start being used as a weapon, logistically, intellectually, and financially, and tactically as an armed secret force to destroy and change governments. The same time, we tried to knock down the government in Iran. We imposed back the Shah, Reza Pahlavi, that was kicked out. After the Second War, nobody wants kings. That happens in Europe. Monarchies start shrinking. Happened in Sweden and many other places. Eisenhower didn't understand that. And he got us in the Vietnam War and in many other international conflicts that are really not nice. Then after that, we have John Kennedy, a Democrat with new ideas. He says, you know what, something is wrong here. During the administration of Eisenhower, civil rights didn't really apply for Americans, Black people were under huge repression. Latins and minorities were discriminated totally. You know, we have an apartheid system. Kennedy came, is a Democrat guy with the different ideas. He understood the challenge of China and Russia. He's the guy who told us that we need to go to the moon, not because it was an easy task, because it was difficult, but we can do it. He put us in a race that changed America structurally, because his perception and his vision, we developed technologies like internet, computer system, everything you know today, like your cell phone, all this equipment, tablet, laptops, everything coming because NASA, you know, the National Airspace Administration, get the resources and the support necessary to develop these new technologies that put us in a race against the Russians. Was actually under his administration, Kennedy, that we tried to stop Vietnam. Is when black people start getting civil rights. We start the marches and protests, you know, for civil rights. Women also start fighting for the civil right. Because all this commotion in the American arena, something happens that changed completely our history. John Kennedy is assassinated in Texas in front of everybody and national TV. They find only one guy guilty. And the guy, we couldn't find anything else because the guy also was killed 2-3 days later. And the guy who killed him went to jail and died in jail. So I don't know, it's a lot of conspiration, but America never really recovered from that. Ethically, morally, we didn't have a mourning process because we need to continue. Now, after the assassination of Kennedy, his vice president, Lyndon Johnson, in 1963, all the way to 1969, he became the next president. He's a Democrat also. Lyndon Johnson understood the job that Kennedy was started. And he's the one who delivered the civil rights movement. He started a new project. It's called the Great Society. One of the best moments in the history of the United States, where the middle classes start growing, because civil rights movements were already established, and many of the women's rights were started to be established. We start developing a better economy, a more fair and right society. We still have a lot of issues, but again, under Lyndon Johnson, the countries start growing again. Due to those march and protests and people complaining, Richard Nixon, extreme right-wing Republican, ran a campaign based on what he called he was going to be the president of the law and order. Did you hear that before? Did you ever hear that before? Lately, you know, here, just in the past elections, the law and order, right? So Richard Nixon was and become the president. Now, what's the problem with Richard Nixon? Richard Nixon was a demagogue. Richard Nixon was an extreme right-wing guy who didn't believe in civil rights. He didn't believe in anything bad, big corporation, power, international control. His Secretary of State was Henry Kissinger. Henry Kissinger, probably one of the worst Secretary of State in the history of the United States. The guy is being called by United Nations a war criminal. He's dead, never was prosecuted. But he was responsible during his administration of disgusting things going on, especially in Central America, South America, and the South Pacific. Under the Nixon administration was the motivation to impose military governments, right-wing, extreme right-wing military governments, all the way from 1973 to 1990s in South America. For more than 20-something years, South America entered in a very dark stage of extreme right-wing military boots controlling the people. Why? because we want to control all the natural resources of those countries, regardless of civil right or human right. During the Richard Nixon, we have, as American, if people remember, he's the guy who started with a huge inflation, a huge unemployment. His numbers were over 10%, 11% in unemployment. Inflation rose over 10%. We have so many issues in the country. And on top of that, we have Watergate. Watergate was the evidence in an investigation in the Congress that demonstrated that Richard Nixon, a Republican president, was involved of corruption. He was spying and breaking into the Democratic Party offices. He was spying everybody. He was keeping tapes to control and extort the opposition. A president of the United States was involved in that. Due to this, the guy was impeached. He resigned before. He resigned. Look at this. The Republican says, we cannot protect you. You need to go. The guy left. Now, I never understood why this happened. If we find out an administration to be corrupted, in this case, the president is corrupted, he's been impeached, why we allow his vice president, Gerald Ford, who also is part of the same boat, to continue his administration? Why then the Supreme Court intervened? Why not then the Congress intervene and says, okay, we're going to call for election? We have the mechanism in our constitution, in our structure. We have the mechanism where this situation can be prevented. We didn't do it. We allow a corrupt administration to stay, a Republican corrupt administration, stay there, criminals, stay there. And we have Gerald Ford. Now, under Gerald Ford, the guy was an incompetent, coming from a rich family, member of the Ford family. He picked up his vice president, and nothing better but Mr. Rockefeller. Nelson Rockefeller became the vice president of the United States, a millionaire who is pro-monopolies, pro-big corporation, pro-no taxes. So one thing Republicans always do is cut taxes. One thing Republicans always do is create unemployment. What Republicans always do is create high inflation. What Republicans always do is create a huge deficit because they double expenses, especially in military, police, and restraining systems. So Gerald Ford provide Richard Nixon with the presidential pardon, and he never faced the music or justice, never was really prosecuted for all his criminal action. After Gerald Ford, we have another president, was Jimmy Carter, a Democrat who came to the government understanding that the problem was huge. Under Jimmy Carter, he has to fight an amazing stagflation. What is a stagflation? It's a high inflation created by the previous administration. Why? Nixon was in Vietnam. He doubled. He sent 10,000 additional troops and more equipment, everything to Vietnam, a war that was about to end. He spent all that money just because he thought that will be good for his re-election campaign or for the continuation of the Republican control over the White House. So Jimmy Carter came. Jimmy Carter is a different kind of president. He is a guy from Georgia, Southern, but with democratic ideas. He understood very much what he has to do with this huge inflation, and most of the problem was through energy. Oil corporations start controlling the prices and controlling supply and demand of gasoline. People couldn't drive the cars because there was no gasoline. Huge lines in the gas stations. You see, corporations react to the fact that we have a president who won no wars, who wants control them. And he, for example, under Jimmy Carter, we have the Camp Davis Accord. Camp David was trying to find a solution for the problem between Palestinian and Israel. He also is the president who created the agreement to return the Panama Canal back to Panama. He created the Department of Energy because he understood we need to have a Department of Energy to look for policies to understand how to supply energy to our nation out of the control of the big oil corporation. Now, he was really unlucky. And under his administration, you gotta remember I told you that during the administration of Eisenhower, we intervened in Iran and we reimposed the Shah. Remember that? That was in the 50s. Well, during the Jimmy Carter was another revolution in Iran. And under that revolution, they kick out the Shah again. And the students took the American embassy as a demonstration of their feelings about what we did in the 50s. So we have hostages there. Because we have hostages, the media and the Republican Party used this to neutralize all the good perception that American people have over Jimmy Carter. Remember, he took the country under a very high inflation and unemployment. He fixed unemployment, he fixed inflation, he fixed the economy. He entered in a process of peace globally, but he couldn't control what's going on in Iran. Republicans find a way to find him responsible and liable. And then after a very scary campaign, in 1981, Ronald Reagan became the president. In 1980, actually, was the election. Ronald Reagan became the president of the United States. Now, attention, Ronald Reagan is another Republican that we need to pay attention very closely in our history. And people today, they forget these things. And I don't understand why. Because they're just here. That happened in 1980 to 1989. It wasn't 3 centuries ago. Why people forget this? Under Reagan, he came out with the brilliant idea of Reaganomics. Reaganomics was tax cut to the big corporation. He says, when big corporations don't have to pay more taxes, they're gonna make more money and the money is gonna drip down, trickle down. They call it the trickle down. It never happened. It's never happened in economy. Big corporations don't care about people, they care about their profit. Ronald Reagan also escalated the arms race, start manufacturing nuclear bombs, trying to complicate things for other countries. He created a lot of tax cuts that create a huge deficit in our financial system. Under his administration was an epidemic starting in mostly areas of up north, New York, Connecticut, AIDS. At the beginning, a problem that impacted only the homosexual community, the gay community, and Ronald Reagan failed to do anything. He just, under his perception and ideology, let them die because what they're doing is not morally right with the Bible. Ronald Reagan started inserting religion in our legal system, religion in our government. And funny thing, people forget that under the Reagan administration was a famous case, the Iran-Contras. What was the Iran-Contras case? The Congress of the United States didn't allow the Republican administration to use funds to intervene in Nicaragua or in Iran. So what we did, George Bush was the vice president for Ronald Reagan in the first half of his administration, for the first 4 years. And George Bush, we're talking about George H.W., the father, he was the director of the CIA. And what they did under this, actually Tom Cruise made a movie about this called Made in America. They came to Florida, they talked to the Cubans, amigos al rescate, friendly friends to the rescue. It's a group of pilots. They have small airplanes. They've been always flying to Cuba, dropping pamphlets and things like that, supporting the cause against Fidel Castro, who came into the government in 1959 after a brutal repressive, right-wing dictatorship. Anyway, don't change the topic. Let's go back to Ronald Reagan. Under the Reagan administration, this CIA and Oliver North, the commander of the Southern Pacific and Atlantic troops that control South America and Central America, they get involved in nasty business. The Iran-Contra affair investigation done by the Congress demonstrate that the government of the United States was involved in the traffic of drugs. They motivate, influence, and develop the narco cartels in Colombia and the manufacturing of cocaine. They flew that cocaine in small airplanes under the radar, and through Florida, Alabama, Louisiana, they introduced these drugs into the Black, Latinos, and minorities market. The money obtained from that drugs was used to buy armaments, guns, and ammunition in the black market. The same airplanes that took the cocaine from South America to United States, now they're taking the guns back to South America to arm the Contras. Who were the Contras? The Contras are the people, the revolutionary army that we tried to create to derrocate the government of Sandino, the government of Nicaragua. And why? Because again, like what happened in the 50s under Eisenhower, Sandino was a guy who was trying to fight against American corporation, agriculture corporation that controlled the land and their agricultural production under very extreme working conditions for the workers, very unfair, and operating as monopolies. So we tried to derrocate Nicaragua's government, getting involved in the money laundering, traffic of guns, traffic of drugs against our own people. We get our own people sick. And then we tried to derrocate the government of Iran. So that was Iran-Contra. Gaspar Baltasar, the Secretary of State, went to jail for this. Oliver North was found guilty. He lost his position in the army or, in the military. More than 10 top officers of the Reagan administration went to jail, and they have to get presidential pardon because they were guilty of crimes that involved the White House, even Reagan. The Congress was controlled by the Republicans, and they stopped the investigation there. Like happened during the time of Warren Harding, when the Teapot and all the oil companies scandal, remember? Don't you see the picture? Republicans are always involved in these kind of particular situations. So, under the Reagan administration, interest rate went all the way to 17%, unemployment rose over 10%, inflation over 12%, and he more than tripled the deficit because he expanded again military, doing nothing to develop the nation. Under the Reagan administration, they cut education budget. Ronald Reagan is the one who told us that corporations have soul. Before Reagan was against the law for any corporation to contribute more than $500 for political campaign. After Reagan, who came in power and told you that corporation has soul, therefore they can contribute to political campaign. That was the beginning of the disaster we are seeing today, because now corporation can contribute billions of dollars to political campaigns. So our House representative, our senators, our presidents, our elected officers don't need the people any longer. We can now match the amount of money corporations pay to elect people and to lobby to pass laws that protect them. That's why every time we have a Republican administration, cut taxes for corporations, deregulate the industry, eliminate regulations, allow corporations to do whatever they want, even though what they're doing is criminal and it's against you. happened because Ronald Reagan decided that they can contribute. Ronald Reagan also appointed a very complicated guy into the administration, and George Bush became the vice president. And remember, in the first period of the administration of Reagan, George Bush was the director of the CIA. After the Iran-Contra issues, Ronald Reagan tried to avoid any legal repercussions, so George Bush became his vice president, and he ran and he became the president of the United States. George H.W. Bush became the president in 1988. He started his administration in 1989 all the way to 1993. Now, what happens under George Bush father? Invasion to Panama. Why? Drugs issues. Noriega, who was an ally during the Reagan administration and the traffic of drugs, also collected a lot of information against the United States. And the guy started and became an issue, liability. And when somebody becomes a liability, we need to eliminate it. So George Bush invaded Panama and knocked down Noriega. We put him in jail for traffic of drugs. The same drugs we, under their administration, they promote. Now, George Bush did something terrible for us, American people. He appointed Clarence Thomas as a Supreme Court judge. This is the same Clarence Thomas that today we are seeing, and his wife, Ginny, supporting very strange positions regarding the Constitution, what the president can do, cannot do, and many other things that are very, very extreme. So anyway, go back to George Bush, H.W., 1989, 1993. He created a big recession under his administration, because what happened in Reagan, remember, they have a huge issue with taxes, inflation. They tried to control it. They expand the budget in a military. They expand the military budget without really having the funds. So they triple the deficit. And because that, George Bush have to confront Black Friday. Under his administration, also we have a lot the big recession. We have a big recession. And under 1991, George Bush was tied also to oil corporations and Kuwait. And because that, when Kuwait was invaded by Iraq, by then our ally, against our war against Iran. Remember, during the Reagan administration, the George Bush administration was a war between Iran and Iraq. We supported Hussein. We give him mass destruction weapons. We supplied them with bombs and airplanes and all kind of guns to attack Iran. Well, we forgot this guy got crazy and tried to control his own people and start killing his own Iraqis friends in his own country. And he used all the mass destruction weapons during that war. So what happened? George Bush went to defend Kuwait. He has friends there with oil corporation, ExxonMobil, and Chevron, that they need protection, protect American assets. So we got in what was called the Gulf War I, the first round, supposedly to neutralize Hussein. Well, as soon as Hussein walked away and removed his troops from Kuwait, we allow Hussein to stay in power. We continue negotiating with him, continue giving him guns, because we want Hussein in Iraq to attack Iran. That's what we tried to do under George Bush administration. After all this chaos and all that mess, Reagan and Bush administration told us also that education is now a function of the government. The government has no obligation to educate its citizens. And the government also has no obligation to provide health care. So it's what they try to do. They try to shrink Social Security, shrink Medicare, and cut budget for education. That happened under Ronald Reagan, all the way from 1980 all the way to 1993. For around 13 years, the structure of education and healthcare was diminished by the Republican administration. And taxes were cut to big corporations. And George Bush, even, he was running under the promises that, read my lips, no more taxes. At the end of his administration, he has to increase taxes, but not to corporations, to us, the people. Then we have Bill Clinton. Bill Clinton was something different. It's a Democrat with new ideas. He's part of what they call the New Democrat, or the third way. He's a guy with a different idea. It's the first president, part of the baby boomer generation. He started the NAFTA agreement to unify the North American market, create a big opportunity, negotiate NAFTA with many countries in South America to make sure that we have partners working with us financially and everywhere. He created the Work Opportunity Act. He started the process for health care and health insurance for millions of American and children's women. The only military action we get involved under the Democrat Bill Clinton was in Bosnia and Kosovo. And why we get there? Because in Bosnia, after the collapse of the Soviet Union, many countries started splitting. And Kosovo and Bosnia are one of those countries that used to be part of the old Yugoslavia and under the Soviet Union control. And these countries start fighting for their own independence. Was a huge religious moment. Christians in control of the government and the guns and the bombs start killing Muslims, exterminating them in a brutal way. We said we can not tolerate that, and Bill Clinton got us in there, stopped the war. We got all the responsible generals and commanders to be prosecuted for war crimes, and we end the issue, and we help Europe to move into more stability, reinforcing NATO alliance, accepting more members in the NATO alliance to prevent Russian invasion. So, and not only that, under the Clinton administration, we relaunched American economy under different aspects. And even though he invests heavily in infrastructure, healthcare, as I said, civil rights movements, as I said, and also it's the first time in history that a president of the United States creates something that's called a surplus, which means the amount of money we expend is less than the amount of money we generate or collect through taxes. We create a surplus, not a deficit, a surplus. It's the first time in history by the year 2000, 2001, that United States and the Congress can say we have a surplus. We didn't increase the deficit, and the economy was brilliant, wonderful. And after that, you gotta remember that at the end of the Clinton administration, Republicans fight him heavily. They tried to demonstrate any kind of crimes. For the 8 years of the administration, the Republicans tried to prosecute Clinton for different cases. Neither one of them, was successful. And they tried to impeach him for lying. And what was the lie that Clinton did or committed? What was his crime? He lied under oath while in the Congress, and a Republican asked him if he has sex with a woman, an adult woman. He's an adult guy. Actually, that's one of those things that is still in my head, and I'm trying to understand. This guy is an attorney. He was the governor of Arkansas. His wife is an attorney. And somebody's coming and asking him, do you have sex with this woman? And he answered the question. That was very stupid. I mean, if somebody asked me, hey, I'm a married man. If somebody asked me, do you have sex with this woman, which is not my wife? I would just look at that person and tell him, what's wrong with you, buddy? You worry about you. Don't ask me personal question. It's not your business, because it's not your business. You cannot ask me that question. The only person with certain right to do that is my wife. Not you, nobody else. But Clinton was stupid. We can say in that sense that he stepped in the stick, man. And he answered the question under oath, and he says no. After that, he tried to change. Well, you need to define what sex is. Sex is sex. But it's very tricky that Monica Lewinsky recognized having oral sex with Bill Clinton while in the Oval Office. That was the crime. And it's tricky that she preserved and kept the dress with the sperm from Clinton. This is a you woman. This is a you woman. And I'm trying to point finger here, but I want you to ask the question. How? Why this happens? Why this happens? Why she kept that dress for so long, and why she contributed with that to demonstrate genetical information to prosecute the president? I never understood that. And I never understood why Clinton answered that question. But anyway, that's the only thing they could say negatively about Bill Clinton, a Democrat, and we, American people, we get so much benefit. Probably the best time in economics. After Bill Clinton, Al Gore, his vice president, was running for presidency against George W. Bush, the son of the previous Bush. George Bush lost the popular vote. And actually, not only that, they were doing a recount. The Constitution of Florida says that under suspicion, and George Bush won only for less than 600 votes, Al Gore has the right to request a recount. And when the recount was underway in Palm Beach, after they find out boxes of votes in the garbage, in West Palm Beach, City of Palm Beach, Boca Raton, and they started recount, the governor of Florida, Jeb Bush, the brother of George Bush, was the governor of Florida. He says no. He talked to the Supreme Court in an historical decision that took only 3 days. The Supreme Court says no, stop the recount. And George Bush become the president of the United States. And this is the funny part. The state of Florida has 25 electoral votes. 25 electoral votes. And also has a very weird rule that says winner takes all. Now, George Bush lost popular vote for millions, and he only won electoral college by 7 points. Florida provide him 25 votes, but he won only in the general election by 7 points. So, and happened that his brother was the governor of the state, and happened that the Supreme Court was controlled by Republicans, extreme right wing, people like Thomas Scalise and Robert. They really manipulate this in a way that even the Supreme Court says, we never can do this again. This is going to happen now, but cannot be repeated. So George Bush became president of the United States. I remember that time. I remember 2001 when, January, February, March, April, everybody was talking in the street, the newspaper, the media, you can see it in the TV. Everybody was very divided. The country was divided, 50-50 divided. Everybody was talking about fraud, election fraud. And suddenly, September 11th, the towers in New York, the financial center collapsed. After that, George Bush started a very weird rhetoric. He started talking about the axles of evil. He started mixing religion. We, the Christians, against them, the Muslim. All the evidence, even the 14 hijackers, the airplanes destroy everything. As a matter of fact, it was an airplane that supposedly hit the Pentagon, in Washington. But the heat from the gasoline, the fuel, the jet fuel in the tanks was so much hot that melt the titanium Rolls-Royce engines. They couldn't find no evidence of the airplane, but they find out the passport of the terrorists. So we find out 14 passports, each one of them naming, pointing people from Saudi Arabia. Osama bin Laden was a guy from Saudi Arabia. The family of bin Laden were financiers and connected to the king and the kingdom of Saudi Arabia. So Saudi Arabia, boom, Iraq. Weapon of mass destruction. George Bush decided to go and attack a country that his father was invading before, with under false pretense ideas that they have mass destruction weapons. We couldn't find it. Now we know, years later, that everything was a lie. Still, no prosecution, no investigation. We are being lied, we are being manipulated. Still, this guy is still painting in Texas like a La La Land. He got also asked into Afghanistan. Afghanistan had nothing to do, but no, the terrorist groups are there. We were searching for Osama bin Laden. For 8 years, he couldn't find him. But he got us in a war that cost trillions of dollars. We invaded Afghanistan for more than 20 years without any result, because never was any intention of finding results there. We invade Iraq, accusing this guy, and we kill Hussein and destroy a country without any evidence of nothing. No mass destruction weapons. Now today, everything was a lie. We know today everything was a lie. Still, they're still praising this guy who is, for me, a war criminal. Definitely. He lied to us, expend money that he didn't have in a war that didn't go nowhere. And worse, under his administration, because all the tax costs increased the deficit, inflation was high, unemployment was high. I remember that. And then, to put together everything, he eliminated all the restriction and regulation created under the Bill Clinton administration to control the banking system and monopolies. And what we have, after he started his war on terror, he fell in every way. He created a financial disaster that by the end of 2008, bring down the whole banking system, and one of the most extreme and violent, we can say, collapse in the housing market and the housing for America. More than 5 million of Americans lost their home. More than 12 millions of Americans lost their jobs. We create an army of homeless people and unemployed people. That was in the middle of the elections. The collapse of the banking system happened on September 14, 2008. Election were in November 2008. Before that, the administration of George Bush failed to help the victims and the families and the states impacted by the Hurricane Katrina and Wilma. It was a disaster. He didn't know how to react. And happens under a Republican administration, ladies and gentlemen. So we have a big collapse in the economy in 2008. We elect Barack Obama, a black president, a guy who Donald Trump called him a Kenyan, an African, a primitive, a monkey. He was an American. I remember all that. I have a memory, and a historical memory, as I told you, from Theodore Roosevelt all the way in 1901, the last decent, ethical, and moral Republican president. After that, I can show you that that Republicans are good in creating unemployment, increasing deficit, high interest rate, high inflation, financial distress. We get involved in stupid wars, we support stupid causes, and we invade innocent people. And we kill a lot of people, and while we spend a lot of money on military and armaments. We are promoters of terrorism. We are breeding enemies to the United States, normally under Republican administration. Then we have Barack Obama, who fixed the economy, created a new healthcare system. They call it the Obamacare, the Healthcare Affordable Act. He avoided wars and violence. He actually got the Nobel Prize for promoting peace and negotiation. Under a black guy, this country got better financial and economical conditions than never before. Only seen under Clinton administration, another Democrat, seen under Jimmy Carter, another Democrat, with Lyndon Johnson, with Kennedy, with Truman, with Roosevelt, with Woodrow Wilson. When we put together history is very powerful. It's very clear. Then we have Donald Trump. Donald Trump, a disaster. Under COVID, he was telling you need to drink bleach, and this is not going to happen. It's only 2 or 3 guys coming from China. He don't want responsibility about that. That's going to pass. By summertime, it's going to be all right. Double the deficit. Increase the deficit. He told us he's going to build a wall that the Mexicans are going to pay it. Mexicans didn't pay it. We didn't build the wall neither. But we double almost $8 trillion that nobody knows what were used for. He cut taxes to corporations, increased taxes to us. Everything increased more. Imposed metal tariff in aluminum and many other things and import product. He says that China will pay for those tariffs. No, moron. We pay for that because the importer has to add that 15, 20, 25% custom tariff into their product. So we pay for that. It's not China. China don't care. It's not anybody else. It's we, American people. We get new taxes, 10, 15, 25% for anything that have copper, aluminum, metal, zinc, steel. Donald Trump is a person without understanding the economy. The guy already collapsed and bankrupt many businesses that nobody will bankrupt. He bankrupt a vodka business, an airline, a university, even real estate corporations, So the guy was really, really, really bad for us, and he didn't do nothing against the Russian. Like Eisenhower, and between 1953 and 1961, who get involved and get us in Vietnam and Korea, Eisenhower didn't do nothing when Russia invaded Hungary in 1960. He just shut up. I'm not gonna get involved in that. Fear to Russian. And Donald Trump did the same thing. Donald Trump, hey, Ukraine, I don't care. You can do whatever you want. Under his administration, we have starting a recession. If you look in the financial data, Donald Trump became president in November 2016. He started in January 2017. And you can see in January 2017, 2018, how the economy started getting flat. And after that, 2019 and 20, the economy started coming down. And then we have COVID, all the way to 2021. Joe Biden came to the administration. He was elected in 2020, November. He swore in 2021. And since then, his administration has been in a process of recovery, trying to recover what another incompetent and failed Republican administration has been doing. Pay attention to this. The Supreme Court is a Republican-controlled legal arm. It's being used. Mr. Clarence Thomas, who was appointed by George Bush, is one of the leaders of this pack with Justice Rother. These guys are being eliminating women's right, children's right. They're being supporting stupid laws, like, for example, immunity for a president for the crime they commit while in the presidency. I don't know, guys. I think the Supreme Court should read this document. It's called the United States Constitution and Other Writings. This book is telling you everything we should know about our Constitution. I think also that the Supreme Court should go and read about Thomas Jefferson. They miss big time. And for sure what they also miss, ethics. Ethics. The Supreme Court lost the compass. The Supreme Court become a legal arm of the extreme right wing, which is supporting fascism, is in the side of the communists and dictators like Putin and the dictator of Hungary, dictator like Korean. I don't understand the Republican Party. When I do history, and I review since Theodore Roosevelt, going from Taft, Wilson, Harding, Coolidge, Hoover, Roosevelt, Truman, Eisenhower, Kennedy, Johnson, Nixon, Ford, Carter, Reagan, Bush, Clinton, Bush, Obama, Trump, and Biden, I can see one common denominator over and over and over. And I don't know why Americans are missing this. Republican administrations are inflation, unemployment, elimination of civil rights, lack of education, lack of health care. They don't invest money in infrastructure. They cut tax to the rich people, helping to create deficit and eliminating the funding for our government. They are pro-monopolies. Today we have 4 corporations that control 87% of the meat market. You have 4 corporations that control 75% of the food distribution. We have 4 corporations that control around 89% of the energy, oil, and gasoline business, energy. We have monopolies. We have 4 corporations that control 99% of the media. So, we have monopolies. We need to break the monopolies. We need to understand that the enemy of the United States are the Republicans. The enemies of you, my friend, are the Republicans. I don't know if you support the Republicans. Please, I know it's a 1 hour speaking about the same topic, but I give you facts and I give you history. Read your history. Read your history. The United States of America history. Read your Constitution. Understand who are your real enemies. As our founder father says, all the way in 1778. The enemy and the only reason why our country will collapse is from inside. We have no enemies outside. China has not been involved in war for more than 300 years. Iran didn't invade nobody for more than 300 years. You know, Vietnam didn't attack us. Korea didn't attack us. They just fought for their independence like many other countries in the Middle East. Like India used to be a colony from Britain, and they got the British people out, you know? So many nations in the 50s and 60s fight for their freedom. We are supposed to be the freedom beacon. We are supposed to be a country who promotes democracy. No autocracies, no military dictatorships, no extreme right-wing oppression over other nations. We are the country that should take care about our own people. The most important capital, the most important value, the most important asset of any nation is their own people. People educated, well educated, make better decisions. People well educated understand better their financial condition, their historical position, and their responsibilities. Healthy people, healthcare. Healthy people work harder, they are less sick. Healthy people understand what is right and what is wrong about diet, food, and what we're eating, and how corporations in the food industry are contaminating our waters, our system, and our bodies. Remember this, education, healthcare are very important. As much important as money. And you know, corporation has obligations. Corporations are using the road that we taxpayers pay to deliver the product to us. They use the infrastructure, internet, electrical system, transportation system that we taxpayers pay for. The workers working for the corporation are educated people by us, taxpayers. Taxpayers contribute around 90% of mostly everything the country is doing. Corporations only contribute 9.4% to the budget. 9.4% is very low. We are contributing around 47% from our taxes, income taxes, plus around 30-something percent, 39% through payroll taxes, which is our money. Payroll taxes, we include Social Security, retirement, NRI, and all this kind of funding that are collected from us. So all the money goes there. Sales taxes only contribute 1.7% to the economy. Do you pay attention to what I'm telling you? Corporations only pay 9.4% of the budget. Corporations should be taxed at least 25%. At least 25%. It's the minimum corporations should contribute to the country that is protecting them, is protecting their branches around the globe. United States is the most powerful nation in the planet. Right now we have 195 nations in the planet. There are two nations we don't recognize, Palestine and the Vatican. We don't count them. So we only have 193 nations, but we have 750 military bases outside the United States. More than 2 million of soldiers, armed forces, brothers, protecting our interests. That's paid for our taxpayers. I'm paying for that, you pay for that. Corporations don't contribute much. The road, the infrastructure, the rivers, the canal, the ports, all the infrastructure required for successful business is paid for us, the consumers. Corporations should pay more, we should eliminate monopolies, and we should pay attention who's going to be the next president. We can go back. We can get a Republican, and definitely we cannot get Donald Trump. The guy is cuckoo, the guy is sick, and he is an alliance with fascists and with traitors and criminals. Just look his background. He himself is a criminal. He's a rapist, he's a womanizer, he's a cheat. He don't pay taxes. He's been found guilty of tax fraud, tax evasion, manipulation of the banking system, banking fraud. He's guilty. People are in jail because those people work for him. So don't forget that in the election time. And I know this is a long story, but you should pay attention. I'm not going to tell you God bless America. I believe that Americans need to be smarter than that. I wish you the best. We should work together. A unified country grows. A divided country collapses. Republicans know that. That's why they want to divide us. Pay attention.